welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok. I think we're only like 30 followers away from 1,000. So follow us over there. That'd be great before they shut TikTok down probably in a few days. I don't know. But appreciate all of you for tuning in on this Friday morning. It is still a Blue Friday because it is still a Seahawks season, even if it doesn't feel that way. But the best part of Friday is we get to talk to our good friend Mike Sando of The Athletic. Mike, Happy New Year. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I hope you're feeling better. No, you've been under the weather, but looks like you're powering on.
I am. You know, the challenge of a one-man show is that I can't really call in sick. So, you just
You're that valuable.
You kind of I feel worse for the people that are tuning in and watching me sneeze and hack and all that stuff. But I can't make for good TV or good YouTube.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Well, it's got to be close. I've got to be close to being all right. But
Yeah.
it's a new year. Well, might as well start it out sick. That makes sense to me. Did you do anything
Absolutely.
special for New Year? Are you a New Year's guy or are you an early to bed guy?
We stayed up past midnight, but just my wife and I hanging out. We played some games. We're not out. We're not really huge go out, drink, socialize, that type of stuff. We're pretty much homebodies. So we had a great night. Like just enjoying time when my mind's not on work, and just
Yeah.
hanging out. I feel like there's this window. I'm kind of the type who's always you're thinking of your next story and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to escape from it. But I find this period between Christmas and New Year's to be wonderful because there's just times when people are down. There's days I didn't write a column. There's just 2 days in a row where I just didn't do a whole lot a couple
Yeah.
times, and
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that feeling. When you can just do that. I wish we could do it more, but I can more in the off season. But in the season, you don't get that. So I really have enjoyed that, and we just hung out. Pretty boring, but that's us. We like
Are
it quiet.
are you a reflective guy? Do you spend time like looking back on the year for yourself? Are you like a planner and make goals for the next year? What kind of where do you fit on that spectrum?
No, I'm not somebody who puts stuff down in writing or has New Year's resolutions. I do try to have a continual awareness of just self-evaluation of what did I get better at. Yeah, I look at it more in a season when a season's over, more than just January. Hey, what are my processes better? Like I feel like I've gotten more in control of my week this year. I think I've gotten better at just how to do it, how to do what I'm doing. Because I've obviously been doing the NFL a long time, but I've really only been doing. I've been at the Athletic. This is I think my sixth year, so it's a new tempo. It's different these last 6 years because I haven't been traveling to games as much. So I have to really. I'm getting better at like how I do it, and so I felt pretty good about this year
How
in
does
that way.
that benefit you by having like a better control or better handle on your week?
Just less stressful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like knowing going in. I've gotten better at like for me, I have to do the big Monday column. The thing's 4,000 words long. Not everybody's going to read the whole thing through, but you're going to see certain things in there that you're interested in and go to. To me, to be able to come up with something that's going to be interesting on Monday that I didn't start writing or think about on Sunday night is a good challenge. And I find that there are things to do to bring insight and research to that um, you can do a little bit in advance and it's still a topical thing for Monday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that lets me have more control. There were times when I first started doing that column, where I didn't have anything really for sure that I was going to do until Sunday. And that's stressful. You never then feel like you can do your best work because it's just too many things, right? I mean, I do 6 items in that thing and really put the thought into each item as if it was its own column sometimes. So that's a process of the week, right? And I think I've gotten to a little bit of a sweet spot there to where I feel
How
pretty
long
good
does it
about it.
take you? How long does it take you to just write the article, and then typically, and then how long if you then include the research in addition to writing?
Well, the research is an all week thing, but that's an all season thing because there's things that I'm thinking about for this week that I thought about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like I know there's going to be something I do on Monday that I've had time to think through for a month, so I've had some stuff ready. I'll actually start. I probably will start doing some of the writing on Saturday. Some, just a couple things for sure. I know I want to do, and then Sunday morning is a big one from about 6 a.m. to the game's kicking off. That's a great time for me to like. Now I sort of know we know what happened on Saturday. I have a good feel, and then I probably can write a third of it that morning. I probably have a third of it written um, for the most part. I'll go back and I'll talk to people. I'll add stuff to it. Sometimes I'll take stuff out or won't run an item, just depending on what
Hmm.
happens. But then by the time I get to the 5 p.m. game, sometimes I'll have the second through the sixth items done. Sometimes, and that never used to happen. That would never happen. So that's just all because of having a better handle on the process and thinking things through, seeing it more as a week-long process or even weeks-long process where you're
Hmm.
thinking things through. Because I feel like if I have time to think something through, I can feel good about it. I'm a thinker on the stuff to where if you give me the assignment 5 minutes before I come on the air or that that is harder for me because I want to really think about it, right? I want to sort of know some things in advance, and then I think through it. So, like, I do this MVP column on. I knew I was going to do it for Thursday. Like, I probably knew for a week I was going to do it. So, the whole time I'm thinking through it. Like, I'm thinking of certain things, and I'll just record myself a message. Or
Hmm.
I'll text. I text things to myself or email things
Hmm.
to myself just when I'm not even because you need to be doing. You do so much of your best thinking when you're not actually thinking about something. It's on your mind, but if you sit there, so the idea of getting your best idea in the shower or something,
Yeah,
you
that's
you have
me
to
for what it's
you've
worth.
yeah
Yeah.
you've but that's because you have freed your mind from the task. If you just sit there and try to think of what you're going to write, you'll be miserable the whole day.
Oh, for sure.
But if you go for a walk, if you go do something else, if you go to the gym, if you go play a game, if you go watch a show, you take a shower, all those things that take your mind off, you're almost on an autopilot for some of those things that you do. That's when your mind actually thinks of the thing that's the best thing you thought of all week
Yeah. Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I find it fascinating hearing from, one of the best in the biz, and how you still approach trying to refine your craft. So I appreciate you letting us peek behind the curtains a little bit. And, even if you are not an objective setter, I'm not either for what it's worth. I am very reflective. I like looking back. I like kind of figuring out what's changed, what's been interesting, and I like the frivolous and the meaningful. But I was asking some friends last night on our show. Is there a show or a movie that this past year stood out to you as like the favorite for you,
Yeah.
from this past year?
So I really enjoyed the movie Lee. Did you ever see that? It's
I did
got Kate
not.
Winslet in it. So
Yeah.
Lee, I didn't know much about the story. It's based on a person named Lee Miller, who was
Uh
a
huh.
fashion model uh, in the World War II era and before that. And she became a photographer for Vogue magazine and ended up kind of willing her way onto the front lines of World War II. And she
Wow.
took some of the most significant photos of the Holocaust and just suffering and the war that exist. But in the movie, Vogue magazine didn't want to. They ran some of them, but they didn't want to. It was too shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes back from the war, and she was a real adventuresome spirit. She really kind of a fun person, but I would imagine it was a PTSD situation that would be undiagnosed. You come back from having seen that, just terrible things,
Mm-hmm.
boxcars filled with bodies, just
Mm-hmm.
terrible stuff. And she went about her life, and she, had she was married and had a son, but didn't really talk about this stuff. And so she dies in the late 70s, and her son discovers like 60,000 photos in the attic.
Oh, wow.
And these become some of the most important photos of World War II.
Huh.
And so that's amazing. And there's a museum. I want to go and I'd love to go to the museum now. But I thought it was really well acted. Kate Winslet did a great job as this free spirited, uh, woman of that era, and then the impact of that, thinking that, can you imagine, like, if your mom did that and you didn't really know the extent of it, then she died and you found it in the
It's
attic,
amazing.
and it's some of the most important stuff that's been recorded in recorded human history. I thought that was amazing. So that really made an impact on me.
I've seen that movie advertised, but I've not watched it.
I think
That
it's on
is-
Hulu. I think
It
it's
is.
on Hulu.
It is. Yeah, I think Rachel and I will have to check that out. I think she would like that too. I know you're not a book reader. I'm not really either, as
Hey,
often as
we
we'd
got
like
a
to
new
be.
one. Do you notice the new book?
I did notice that. Is that something
So
you
this
actually read?
right here, this is unbelievable to me to finally get. I'm gonna grab it. So this book here is the Bible for coaches. For coaches. Notice the foreword's by Mike Holmgren.
Ah,
And so these books are expensive to get. They could be anywhere from a few $100s into the thousands. So I've never had one, but I found one. It was kind of one of those, Christmas money from family got sent to me, $100 here or there, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to buy something I wouldn't normally buy. And so I got that book and I started reading it. I've always wanted it. It's just a Bible of coaching. So, and then, Bill Walsh, obviously, like I said, Mike Holmgren wrote the foreword to it. So there's huge impact on coaching. If you ask Bill Belichick, what's the most influential book in coaching you've ever read, he'd say, I bet you $1 million he'd say this one. I think he said that. So I started reading it last night, already got a couple good notes out of it. I'm real excited about it. So that's one that I will definitely take the time to read this year, and I'm really excited about it. And it's actually an autographed copy. So
that's
that
pretty
was pretty
cool.
neat. It's pretty
Yeah.
neat. Yeah, I was very surprised to get it for the price that I got it. It was cheaper than I thought I would get it for. So that's my new edition. And
that's an
I am reading
unexpected
it.
bonus. I wasn't going to ask you about books because I know you said before when we had you and Dave on that you don't read as many as you'd like. So
No, yeah, exactly. But I'm totally into that. So I need
there
the
an
time
article-
to stand still. Yeah, I need the time
is there
to
an
stand
article
still.
from this past year I mean, I know you read more articles than you do books.
So it's funny because we usually, like today, I knew you were going to ask me this for a little bit, but not for a long time. And I read so many articles, and I probably annoy people by forwarding them to them, or hey, check this out. So I can't give you my one for sure because there's too many, and I didn't really go through them all. But in just sort of scanning through, one that I enjoyed in football. Well, first off, I would say read anything by Dan Pompei. I think Dan's. I would bet you that there's one that Dan did this year that it's not occurring to me right now, that would probably be in the top couple. But I enjoyed Zach Kiefer's piece on Troy Aikman. It was kind of about the struggle to enjoy success. And one of the things I ran across in this book, this Walsh book, was it was a quote from, who was it? It might have been from somebody not in politics or somewhere else, but it's that idea of never being sat. Oh, it was from Arthur Ashe. The idea that whatever you do doesn't feel good enough, right? How many people feel that?
Yeah, for sure.
Don't you feel that? And it's probably some complicated mix of how you're raised or just whatever, that. But I thought, you look at somebody like Troy Aikman, who's won 3 Super Bowls, right? I think he won 3 Super Bowls. He's a Hall of Famer, and he makes $18 million a year as the #1 broadcaster. And most people think he's good, right? He's not one of those guys that people make fun of, or
No.
like he's good, and he like struggles to enjoy it. And he's kind of gotten a little bit more of some tools and just awareness to like, wait a minute. Everybody would want to be Troy Aikman, right? I mean, he's done everything that anybody would want to do. Like, what would Troy Aikman change other than probably some injuries? He took some concussions. I'm sure he has some health things that he has to deal with. But this guy's like in shape, like he's 25. He's got the best job. He's a legend for America's team. And he has a hard time kind of enjoying it. Isn't that interesting?
That's the human
So-
condition, man.
It's the human condition. So I'm really interested in that because we would all look at Troy Aikman and even say, come on, man, this has got to be great. But you realize that's not how you realize success.
It's not where
Or that's
fulfillment
not,
comes
That's not
from.
what it's all about. So, For me this year, that type of an awareness, like we mentioned before, my oldest son got married, so he's, going in a new a path where he'll deal with more of these things too, right? And everybody does. So I think just articles that bring an awareness to our condition, or just wait a minute, can we handle these things in a better way, right? Do we need to be thinking about things a little bit differently? I'm really interested in it, and I thought Zach Kiefer's story on Aikman did a good job of that.
That's a great topic. It's one that I feel like has been central to the way I've kind of led my life in general, and what I've not figured out.
Well, leaving your job though, you had an amazing job and you left it.
Right. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been exposed to people that have tons of money or tons of fame, or all the things that people crave, and are some of the most miserable people on the planet. And people that have kids and people that don't have kids, and all the things that are supposed to be kind of formulaic of what makes life worth living. And it's not that. Like, I always go back to, I think some of the most happy, fulfilled people are surfers living in a shack with 6 other friends that spend their time renting out surfboards for minimum wage and then surfing the rest of the time. And they can't do that generally their whole life, but
no, but they're present. They're in the present.
Yeah, they're doing what they love, and they're not overthinking things. They're not trying to be more than what they want to be. There's a skill in that. There's a real skill in that. But achievement's also great.
Yeah, I get a lot out of. I go back and forth in my mind, like, what would be the ideal thing? Sometimes you just love to be, have nothing to do and not have any. Would have money and not have to worry about it. I think I'd probably go crazy. My wife says I'd go crazy because I do like to have. But what I'm trying to get is, like, I've got this amazing job. It's really fun. I want to do it to the best of my ability and not be stressed about it. And I think I can do that. I think I can. I've done a better job of turning those dials of, like, hey, be in control of it.
Yeah.
Don't feel like things are hanging over you a little bit, and you can almost never feel satisfied. Yeah. That's the hardest thing, is like, you're putting your name on something publicly, and if you don't feel great about it, that's a terrible feeling for me. But it shouldn't be. So,
I think it's a fascinating conversation. People will be really amazed and probably bored by the conversations that my buddies and I have before the Seahawks games, when we're getting drinking and eating and, like, some of it's about football. So much of it is about this kind of stuff. We get deep into, like, ridiculous topics. So I know people are like, can we talk about football already? We're 20 minutes in. We haven't talked about football. I appreciate it, and I get to be the director. So I appreciate you spending some time with me on that. Hard pivot here for a second. There was a funny thing I saw, and I want to get your perspective on this, Mike. The long-standing tradition of rookies paying for veterans' dinners, rookie night out.
Oh, yeah.
Last night, apparently, Byron Murphy took out the entire Seahawks defensive line, and they gave him a check. And the check printed out, like, with itemized, for $155,000. And it was a joke. So it ended up that he didn't know it at the time, $155,000. But then they gave him the real check. It was $38,000. I was sitting there thinking, that's rough for a rookie to one rookie. Like, sometimes you get a couple rookies to kind of diffuse the payments, spread it out. I saw him there with Jamie Sheriff, who is an undrafted free agent. I'm guessing Jamie's not contributing to that check. It's going to the first-round pick. But, man, to be the only first-round pick and to be the first-round pick among defensive linemen who can eat like crazy.
So I just did some math for you. So Byron Murphy's base salary of $8.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took the 38,000 as a percentage of that, and then adjusted it for someone making 100,000 a year, it would be a $457 dinner.
Okay. Okay.
Which would be a lot. I mean,
yes.
But there's a lot of people who make $100,000 a year who've done a $500 dinner once in a big celebration, right? A lot. That's happened a lot. So that to me, like understanding that scale of what it would mean to have $8.3 million as your salary. Plus, he's making way more than that over the course of the year. The 38,000 is ridiculous, but it's a totally think of how much you'd have to eat into that salary before it would affect what you would even live on, probably. So I think that's if it's in good spirit and good fun, and the guy's making that much money. I think that's a funny type of a thing. And I love that they went 150 because that would be, he'd be like, oh my gosh. That'd be like the equivalent of a $1,500 dinner.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I don't want to do that.
Well, Raptor Rancher here says, way back when, that was my yearly teaching salary. I'll go one further. My first salary out of school doing tech support was $30,000, which I thought was more money than I could ever spend.
But I'm older.
Oh, man.
No, I think my first minimum wage was $3.25 an hour when I started working.
Someone was asking where they ate. I think they went to Ascend Steak and Sushi, which I've never been there.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, let me think about this. Did I go there, or did I really just want to go there?
I'm going to have to try it. I mean, I've typically been a Daniel's Broiler guy. I've been to El Gaucho, but I've been to the Met.
How about 31, the one in Bellevue?
I haven't been to 31.
So, the funny story about this. So, it's like on the 31st floor overlooking Bellevue, and it's a great steakhouse.
Okay.
But I have not been to Ascend. I think I just want to go there. It's on my list of places I'd love to go. But I was going there, and I was meeting somebody, and I was going to pick up the tab. But it's one of those places where you can order you can get, the normal expensive steakhouse steak where it's $70 or something, for a really nice steak. Or they have it, the Japanese stuff that's like by the ounce. Well, this guy that I was meeting, like, he starts ordering by the ounce. We're like going up high. Like, and I was like, whoa, like the bill went up really fast, really quickly. I was feeling a little Byron Murphy angst there. Like it was affecting what I was going to order, because you start doing it by the ounce. I mean, it really adds up, at those types of places. It could be like, I can't remember. Would it be in the hundreds an ounce, 100 an ounce or something?
I wouldn't be surprised.
It was ridiculous.
The best steak I've ever had was in Tokyo. And it was just at one of the, I'm forgetting it, but they serve you, they cook it right in front of you. Teppanyaki, I think. Teppanyaki.
Yeah.
And this is a place where they put live prawns. They actually fry them to the table. Like you see the prawns trying to get. It's pretty awful if you're someone who's got a little bit of a soul about.
You don't like to watch the lobsters go
other
into the
living
pot.
beings, but the steak. Oh my God, Mike! Best thing I've ever had. So good. Tokyo is really tough to beat for food.
Oh yeah, there's a place that's not as expensive by steakhouse standards in Tacoma called Cuerno Bravo, and it's a Mexican steakhouse. I love it. I love it, and it's you can get some really nice cuts that are not what you'd spend at even some of those other steakhouses we mentioned. I feel like it's reasonable, and they'll bring it out on a super hot block.
Oh,
and so
nice.
You can then they'll bring it out. Usually a little on the rarer side, but you can leave it on there as long as you want. It'll continue to cook. So I like mine medium rare. I'll pull it off. But then if I'd like a little bit more, I just put it on there for a second.
I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very good. Very good steakhouse. It's a little place and you need a reservation and it's not, super fancy inside, but I think it's really good.
All right. Well, you've convinced me. That was meant to be a segue into football with Byron Murphy, but we can't help ourselves talking about steak. Seahawks play a game this week that doesn't really mean much. it does mean something from an incentive standpoint for players like Geno Smith and for some of these other guys. I'm sure Leonard Williams would like to put up a couple more sacks to make it even more of a snub that he was not named to the Pro Bowl, despite leading all.
Maybe he can make All Pro.
Yeah, what do you think about that? What do you think his chances are of making the All Pro team?
Probably pretty good. I wonder if it helps him that he got snubbed, that people will
look at
think
his
of
numbers
him more, a little bit more of an awareness as the voters hear, oh my gosh, this guy wasn't Pro Bowl. Does it give a little bit more of an awareness to him? Possibly.
Yeah, I hope so, because I mean, you look at his production this year. I don't think he's a defensive player of the year, but I think it was in the conversation for getting votes for that level of impact on this team. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that just because I'm a Seahawks fan. That he was the best player on that team for a good chunk of the year, and he's probably the biggest reason that they have 2 or 3 wins that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
The Jet game.
Yeah, the Jets game is the best example of that. He also, against Arizona, the first time was just absolutely dominant. So we'll see about that. But, part of what I wanted to ask you about is with the Pro Bowl, this is written into contracts, right? Like, it affects, like, forget like agent written things. It is like it affects escalators for rookie contracts and RFA tenders and stuff like that. How can that be when it's such a flawed system?
Yeah. Well, I think any system would be flawed, right? If they were using PFF grades or if they had a special panel of general managers who ranked guys, it's all going to be a little bit flawed. So I think for the most part, of Pro Bowl selections, would you say 75% of them are pretty close to what most people would do? And then 25% of them are probably screwed up. Would you guys probably something like that?
Probably. I'd feel comfortable saying 60%, but maybe it's 75.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it could change as we've changed away from even having a game, but I haven't sensed that there's like a lot of movement or discussion on that. I mean, the Pro Bowl is imperfect, but it is what it is, and it's worked for those purposes. You would want some sort of incentive like that in there if you were a player, right? Even if you don't love the system, what would be the perfect system? Because we can do, the PFF grades of Seattle's team. John Schneider's going to agree with 50% of them and then disagree with 50% of them, right? In the Pro Bowl, he's going to disagree with 50% of them, or even though the PFF one may be better or worse or whatever. You're never going to solve that, I don't think. So the question is, do you want to have it or not? And that's up to the teams and the players. They don't have to have, right? It's not a mandatory thing to have in there. They negotiate that. Mm-hmm. They say, hey, Gino, we don't want to go there. But you know what? If you have a season that's so good that the voters, Pro Bowl voters, you get on that, then we'll talk. And I think that's okay.
We are at the point where people are talking about some of the awards and who will get what. And you wrote about it in your MVP column and kind of debating this. And you actually, I was excited. You went and took on the topic we talked about last week with the Bengals a little bit, a team that has so much. How are they not? How are they not better? What did you conclude there?
Yeah, well, that's Zach Taylor saying we have the best player in the world, and I'm like, then why is it so hard to win the games?
That was a dangerous thing to say for a coach.
Yeah. So, I looked at basically every MVP quarterback for 25 years, and we can just get a statistical baseline. It was just kind of their EPA per play. What is it on average? And from there, I said, okay, if that's the average for these guys, how many games did Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow hit that standard? That's just a big picture way. And it was 11 times for Lamar, it was 8 times for Josh Allen, and 4 times for Burrow. Mm-hmm. So I think what happens, there's a lot of sort of pseudo-imaginary factors that people use to advocate for favorite players. If you're a Josh Allen fan, you're going to say, hey, they reset their weaponry, it's not very good, there's not a lot around them, right? Then you talk to people who play the Bills, and they're like, dang, they got the best offensive line we've seen. James White, their running back is a really good back. He's one of the top. James Cook, sorry.
Yeah.
James Cook is one of the top backs in the league. And actually, this guy they drafted, their receivers group is underrated, right? That's what happens. Then you go Joe Burrow, no offensive line, and then obviously he's got great receivers. And Lamar's got this amazing running back. Well, yeah, that running back is doing 50% better than he ever did before because he's with Lamar, right? So those are all things you can use if you have an agenda. To me, those are like tools you could use if you want to favor your guy. And I kind of set those aside unless there's something so overriding. If we have a team that's just absolutely terrible and somebody's carrying them all the way, take it into account. So from there, I just look at their defense, special teams. How much of a boost are they getting to win the games? And Burrow's getting the least, but Lamar hasn't gotten much better. And he's been able to win those games, including twice against Burrow when it was 41-38, super high-scoring games. Lamar ended up winning those. So to me, I haven't voted yet. I think it's between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I haven't made a final decision. I have leaned towards Lamar throughout a lot of the season because I think he was doing more to overcome. But I think Josh Allen has closed that too lately. And I think Lamar's defense, special teams have been better. So I think there is a decision to be made there. I laid it out. I didn't pick one in it. And part of that's because, as a voter, the AP doesn't want us saying for sure who we're voting for because there's gambling and all this sort of thing. So I try to keep an open mind too. I don't want someone to read it as if, hey, this guy's anchored on somebody, right? I like to lay it out and then people can make their decision off of that. And I even made a case for Saquon Barkley too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, you bring up Saquon Barkley, and I did not give you time to think about this. So if you don't have one, that's fine. Yeah. His play where he jumps backwards over somebody, I think most people would probably call that like play of the year. Yep. I will tell you my play of the year was actually, and this is biased, but it's also true, Kenneth Walker somersaulting in a wrestling move over the
not
Detroit
going down.
line. I've never seen anything like that on a football field. That was unbelievable. Like power, creativity, like self-sacrifice. That was like the quintessential football play to me. And that was, for me, the play of the year.
That's great. And think of it as two running backs. Think of how great of athletes those guys are.
Unbelievable.
And have to be. Just the combination of speed and strength, to have those two things in abundance is really hard to do. You need big, strong guys or super quick, fast guys. To really blend those two things together is, when I think of like maybe the greatest athlete that's ever played, it might be Bo Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
Bo Jackson would be bigger, faster, stronger than anyone playing today, like of any running back or before him. But these are the types of guys that can do those types of things, right? A Kenneth Walker or Saquon Barkley are related. they're in the same family of position.
Well, so let's turn our attention to the playoffs. The Seahawks are not going to get there, and I'm curious, before we get to the playoff teams, what do you think the main reason is? If you give the main explanation to somebody who said, why did the Seahawks not win their division, not make the playoffs? What would be your answer?
Well, I mean, the basic reason is because they were too inconsistent in their whole operation, offense and defense, and special teams had major hiccups the whole way. I think we recognize the defense found its way, right? It found its way, so you feel good about that. You sort of leave them off the hook a little bit now, and we focus more on the offense. But all of it was extremely up and down at different points of the season, and rarely, maybe the Arizona game, they had it all come together, right? The game down there, where it all played consistently well. So I think when you look at a big picture view going forward, you feel like the defense is probably squared away and you want to know what's going to happen on offense. But if this season was if the Seahawks are a slot machine with the three things that have to line up, they just didn't line them up enough. They'd have one but not the other all the time throughout the year. And so you're never going to be consistent. I think that's how you lose at home to the Giants. Should never happen, but it did because they were inconsistent. So they got consistency on defense. We feel good about it, but we don't feel they have that on offense, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is very interesting because you've got a Rams team that's going to win the division or has won the division. that's averaging less points per game, less yards per game, has an offensive coach, has the better quarterback, most people would say, has elite receivers, has invested in their offensive line, has a running back that everyone believes in. And yet offensively, like against that same Arizona Cardinals team, they had to scratch and claw to get 13 points in a game they needed to clinch the division at home.
I think your point on them is great. It's like, hey, we're giving them their flowers. Why? How good have they looked, right?
We're going to find out pretty quick in the playoffs. They are resting their starters this weekend, which is an interesting thing. And I guess I would say it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't from a seeding perspective for the Rams, because all the other NFC teams you're going to face are pretty damn good. I don't know. Like, don't even think Washington's an easy draw against that Rams defense. So I'm curious, when you're looking at the playoff field, and let's start with the NFC, and then we'll turn to the AFC and get your ultimate kind of perspective. But which are the teams that you feel like are best positioned in the NFC going into the playoffs?
Oh, I think Detroit, Philly, and Minnesota, depending who wins that Detroit-Minnesota game. The winner of that's in really good position. And then I think Philadelphia is too. I think they're a good team. They got good on defense. They'll get healthier at quarterback. Still have some limitations, but I think, in the passing game probably if they really have to pass. But I think those are clearly the teams. And then I feel like Green Bay's a little bit of a wild card, like in any week could beat anybody. And
Yep.
Tampa might be too.
Yeah.
I think Tampa is, because Tampa, unlike the Rams, can score.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can really. If you look, Baker Mayfield's got like 39 touchdowns. He's had some really big games. So, I think those two teams probably more than the Rams and Washington to me get your attention because they could. I think they could put up 34 points on anybody.
I often like to say, I mean, this is my own perspective, but that I generally think the team that wins the Super Bowl has the best single side of football in the NFL that year, the most dominant single unit, like the best offense that's like the best of any unit in the NFL, or the best defense that's the best unit of any unit in the NFL. What do you think's been the best unit? I'll give you a second and start with mine. For me, Detroit Lions offense has been the best unit of any unit in the NFL. And now they're dealing with their defense being very, very injured, but that offense has been good enough to still pull out games. We'll see if that continues in the playoffs. Do you have a group that's a different unit that you'd put into that mix?
I think I think you could certainly make a case for Baltimore. I think that their offense has been really great too.
Mm-hmm.
But, and in fact, their offense is number one in EPA per play, just looking at it here.
And in DVOA.
The Bills are number one in the second half of the season, I believe. And Detroit's going to be the top three either way. So I think you can't go wrong with those. I have felt I think I agree with you that I feel Detroit's was the best the whole year. I feel that, even like I said, the stats may give a slight edge to Baltimore or might bring Buffalo in. I just feel like the whole package of their offensive line, their skill, their play caller. Now, Jared Goff, I think, without some of those things, I don't know if he does as much on his own.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting to me about the playoffs is we've seen like Lamar Jackson suddenly look ordinary in the playoffs, right? And I think Goff can sometimes look that way too. And Jalen Hurts can look that way, right? We would think Sam Darnold could look that way, and he hasn't. We would think Baker Mayfield could look that way. What we're seeing is all these really good teams in the NFC, none of them have a quarterback that would be voted into tier one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the seeds. Detroit, no. Philly, no. Rams, I mean, some people put Stafford on the edge, but no, not this season.
Not this
Tampa,
season.
no. Minnesota, no. Washington, no. Green Bay, no. We're down into Seattle, Atlanta. So look at that. And that was
did you see the Pro Bowl quarterbacks for the NFC? I mean, there's zero people that would have predicted those three names for the Pro Bowl in the NFC to start the season. I mean, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, and
I love I love that Baker Mayfield was being snubbed.
Yeah, I know, right? Like that's the state of quarterbacking right now.
Yeah, who was the third one? Goff, Darnold. Oh, Daniels, Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, yes.
Yeah,
all deserving.
All deserving, but that was so. Remember, coming into the season, there were only 3 Tier 1 quarterbacks, and they were all in the AFC.
And Patrick Mahomes doesn't make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes at 15-1 doesn't make it, but he's
crazy.
The most feared player going into the postseason.
Yeah.
And I would think this year, unless Lamar just absolutely loses out in the first round, I mean, he's likely going to make it into Tier 1. So you're going to have 4 Tier 1 quarterbacks next year. They're all in the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing.
It's a good time to be in the NFC, Mike.
It's an interesting thing to me in the NFC with these teams that are there's some really good teams.
Yeah.
Detroit and Philadelphia. They're squared away on their offensive line. They got great running backs. They got wide receivers. They've got good play callers. I think the Eagles have a good defense, and I think the Lions did. The Lions have a good statistical one, but they're just injured. So those are really good teams that are showing you can do this and maybe get there without having one of those top quarterbacks.
Well, the story of the NFC, I feel like it's going to be is how much is the offensive line the defining factor? Like we've talked about this all season about how the decay of offensive line play in the NFL. The Eagles have a Pro Bowl tackle, should have had 2, to be honest. Had a Pro Bowl tackle, Pro Bowl guard, Pro Bowl center. Like, hard to beat that. No one's going to argue about Detroit, who also had a Pro Bowl center, a Pro Bowl tackle, could have had Pro Bowl additional guys. You're not going to see that from Minnesota. Green Bay has a pretty darn good offensive line, but Minnesota does not. And
Minnesota's is okay, though, isn't it? I know he took a lot of sacks, but no,
it's not great. It's basically O'Neal is a good right tackle, but they lost, Christian Darrisaw earlier, and Cam Robinson has been not great. And then their interior offensive line is not great. But it's Kevin O'Connell, who's probably coach of the year, most likely. And Brian Flores, you'd argue maybe that is the best coached team overall this year in the NFL. And so it is going to be interesting. If you had to pick one team, and I don't know if you're allowed to, if you have to keep this secret for other things you're doing, but if you had to pick one team to come out of the NFC, who would you currently put your bet on?
To me, it's between Philadelphia and whoever the 1 seed is, whatever team comes out of that. And I would favor more Detroit over Minnesota if Detroit were to win the game Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how I go. I don't know that Detroit will win it. I mean, I may lean towards Detroit right now. But I am really torn on it. I kind of want to see the game Sunday night.
I'm sure you do. It would be a lot easier to answer this question.
Maybe my answer is Philadelphia. Amid the uncertainty of the others, and let's see what happens. Maybe I just feel better about let's just go with Philadelphia, which is, I think, a really good team on both sides of the ball.
I am probably the only person left on the planet that does not believe in Philadelphia as a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
I don't.
They feel fragile to you?
I think teams that are that run heavy in their offensive philosophy in the playoffs, when you're facing the best, run games become harder to come by. Like it really does come down to quarterback play and situational play against the best defenses and the best coaches. Yeah. Jalen Hurts and that offense for me doesn't do it. I think their defense is good, is very good. Maybe it'll be in the conversation for best in the playoffs, but I think Minnesota's defense is a little bit more interesting. For me, I think it's Detroit or Minnesota. And I just think Detroit they've got all the markings of the team to do it. Minnesota's played very mistake-free football. And I got to say, Mike, Green Bay really shocked me with how poorly they played against Minnesota. I thought that they would be the team that would go in there and kind of put their mark on we're the team to worry about in the playoffs. They really stunk it up for most of that game.
I think they're a real young team that's just not there yet. You know,
that might be the reality.
I think that's what it is. I think these other teams are further along and, and sort of being more reliable. So I think I think we agree in the extent that like I said, I want to see the winner of that Detroit Minnesota game because that's probably the team for me. And then Philadelphia would be, if I can't pick one of those, I think they're a good team. But you make a great point that I do believe too that their quarterback situation could be limiting for them.
I just can already picture the headlines of Jalen Hurts passing, doesn't do it, and Philadelphia fans turning on him. But what about the AFC? I mean, you just talked about how much talent there is. You've got Baltimore, you've got Buffalo, you've got KC. Where do you lean now?
Well, definitely towards Kansas City because here's what I see happening. I mean, I like the other teams too. But them getting the bye and getting some things squared away, what's going to happen through this seeding is Buffalo and Baltimore are probably going to play each other before they play Kansas City, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to have the seeding's really going to work for Kansas City to where they're just going to have to beat one of those teams at home, not both, right? They don't have to go on the road and go through Buffalo and Baltimore. That's what we were worried about at a certain point during the year when they were winning, but maybe they were 7-0 and they were flawed, and we thought, my gosh, they're not going to keep winning like this. What if they fall off down the stretch and have to go on the road? But they don't have to do that. Like they sort of got some things figured out. Now they get to rest, and these other teams have to play each other. So I like where Kansas City's at. How about you?
It's hard to bet against the Chiefs. It's a funny thing where Patrick Mahomes doesn't get named to the Pro Bowl. I think he's still, if you had 32 GMs and they had one pick of any player in the NFL who they'd pick, he'd be the guy. Doesn't matter what his stats say. If you had to win one game, that's the guy you want. And then defensively, Steve Spagnuolo's been just a mastermind for years. He's won so many Super Bowls, and people don't talk about it like that, but I think he's won as many Super Bowls as Andy Reid has in terms of who I give responsibility to the win. Like he won the games the last couple times they played. And he certainly in the Giants Super Bowls, he was a huge reason why they won. At the same time, there's something about Buffalo this year. It's hard to predict it, but
right.
Josh Allen has played. You can't say, Josh Allen will finally play well. He's played amazing football against the Chiefs, and it hasn't been enough.
Oh, he's owned them.
He's been amazing.
To me, it does feel like, just off of feelings, it sort of feels like it's Buffalo's time.
That's my feeling.
And that they may be the team to do it. I just don't know. I don't know that they've solved their. I don't know that I fully trust them to handle all the late game situations now all the way through the playoffs either.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just seems very foolish to bet against the Chiefs, period. Yeah. Like, I think that's the safest bet.
But the Bills have put up points on the Chiefs every time just about for years. Yeah. And they've lost a couple times in the postseason, but their offense has dominated Kansas City.
If you asked a Chief fan and you asked Andy Reid in the building privately, who's the team you'd least like to face in the playoffs?
It's got to be
Who Buffalo. Do you think they'd say?
I think it's got to be Buffalo, don't you?
I think so too. Too.
I think Buffalo's got a real chance. Yep. But
I hope for the NFL's sake and for his sake that this becomes the playoffs where Lamar Jackson shows up and gets that monkey off his back, because honestly, everyone talks about him being MVP and one of the best quarterbacks, and statistically, there's no doubt. He's proven it as a passer, he's proven it as a runner, as a leader, like all this stuff. For me, his playoff performance has been so disqualifying for him as one of the best players that until I see it, it's really hard for me, Mike, to take Baltimore seriously.
There's no one who has more at stake in this postseason, is there?
Probably not, right? I
I
mean,
mean, Jalen Hurts might, but he's been to a Super Bowl. We know what he is, you know.
right.
I think Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. If he keeps doing what he's doing, and then bombs in the playoffs, he's still probably going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
But he's not even a Dan Marino Hall of Famer. Like I mean, Dan Marino did pretty well in the playoffs. You know?
Yeah, Dan Marino, exactly. Yeah, he was. I'm just looking at at Lamar's playoffs here. What's interesting when you look at his playoffs is last year his playoffs numbers actually were decent overall. I know he was bad in the last game. Well, they weren't great. He took too many sacks. He
Yeah.
takes a lot of sacks in the playoffs.
He does,
remember
and
that now.
he's like a different. Like I thought last year was going to be the year that he kind of broke the mold of what he had been, but he just he's turned into a very different player, a much less threatening player in the playoffs, both as a passer and as a runner. So I hope for him, I hope for all of our sakes that changes, because if he could actually come alive, then we've got a 3-team race that's legitimate. If he's just
Yeah,
going to be
and
the
I
old
think of their
playoff
game
Lamar.
last year. I mean, that shoot, he completes the pass down inside the 10-yard line, and the guy fumbles it. You know,
Yes.
it was like it was closer than it wasn't just a complete horrific meltdown. You know, it was closer, and he had a good game against Houston, a pretty good game. So yeah, we'll see, because you know if we look at these standings right now, who would they play? They would play. See, 2 would play 7, 3 would play 6. They'd play the Chargers. It'd be a Harbaugh Bowl, right? That's what it would be right now.
So I think
If this
I'd
were to
probably
go.
end up with Kansas City being the team that comes out. Sounds like you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah, but I think we feel exact same on that. We would like to pick Buffalo. It's a little bit more challenging for them because they're going to have to go through Baltimore. By the way, Baltimore beat Buffalo 35-10 this year.
Yeah.
So, like, that would be very interesting to me. A Baltimore Buffalo playoff game with some legacies. You know, not that there's some legacies. There's some postseason
Mm-hmm.
legacy stuff there that would be interesting to me.
So then if it's KC against, yeah, it sounds like Detroit for you, or whichever, Detroit or Minnesota is your pick, probably, depending on who wins
Yeah.
gets the bye. Who do
Yeah.
you think would win that game?
I can't go against Mahomes.
You
do
sound
it.
so
No.
pained. That's so
I know,
painful.
because I felt like all year Detroit or Buffalo would take it to Kansas City, kind of.
Yeah.
That's what I felt,
Yeah.
like they were better.
Yes.
And I think if the Chiefs were sort of limping these last couple games, but they look like a team that got through the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
They look like like part of great coaching and is solving the problems that have plagued you.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I don't know what they're going to do at left tackle. They put Joe Tooney over there, and it worked really well. But they're also getting DJ Humphries back, so maybe they'll have that. There could still be some uncertainty of what they're going to do on the offensive line, but it felt like they fixed some of that. Mahomes dodged a bullet with the injury and gets the rest. Hollywood Brown's in the mix. They started to see some things from Xavier Worthy. You're going to get a different Kelsey probably because he'll be, you know, it's different for the playoffs, right? He can suck it up for a couple games here and maybe be a little bit more of an impact than he's been in the regular season. You can kind of see it coming together. Charles Omenihu has been an impact player in their pass rush. He's kind of in the mix again. Only played 5 games this year. When he played when he played on third and second or longer, their pressure rate was up 10%. Their sack rate doubled, right? There's some potential indicators. I still think they have some issues at corner that, you know, they don't have L'Jarius Sneed, and they could be vulnerable to these teams. But they're still the Chiefs.
When you imagine a Super Bowl, all the pomp and circumstance, all the pressure, and you imagine Jared Goff or Sam Darnold going against, or Jalen Hurts, going against Patrick Mahomes.
With Spags.
It was Spags. It's just really hard. It's hard to imagine. It's like the way I feel about the Rams Super Bowl that they won. They could not have been more fortunate to be not only playing that Super Bowl at home in LA, but to have that be the year that Joe Burrow knocked off the Chiefs and they didn't have to face the Chiefs or the Bills. Like, unbelievably fortunate for the Rams that year. I don't think they win a Super Bowl if either one of those other teams get there. And this year, I think if you're Detroit, you got to hope that it's my favorite Super Bowl combo, Mike, would be Detroit-Buffalo. Two teams that have never done it.
I totally agree. Both
would
on the
love
Great
to see
Lakes.
that in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I would love to see that too. I think that would be the great fan story. With Detroit, I just wanted to make it there without, any more injuries, so that we don't have a shell of them, playing in the Super Bowl.
If they didn't have all the injuries that they've had, I would be picking Detroit. I think they are the best team in football this year.
I would too. And I'm still not totally coming off of them,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like them. I do like them, but they still have to get. They may be the 5 seed going on the road for all we know.
I know. It'll be interesting. I can't wait, Mike. I think it's gonna be a great playoffs, even without the Seahawks in it. And I think there's a lot of interesting storylines. We will continue to talk through it. And next week, we might even have some coaching conversations to have. The season will wrap up. There'll be some changes made, some people let go. We'll find out probably for sure whether Ryan Grubb is going to come back for the Seahawks or not. So we'll have a lot to talk about. Looking forward to it. What should people? Anything other than your pick six? Anything that people that's percolating that people should check out?
Well, just the MVP ways. If you want to look through it, I thought the piece that I did for Thursday goes through those guys pretty good, and I made the case for Barkley too. You talked about them being too run heavy. They're the pass heaviest organization, the most pass oriented for the previous 25 years, and they've totally flipped that around. And I think they've needed to protect Hurts. I don't think they're a good passing team, like you said. I think Barkley's impact on that team is incredible. Like he's the reason why you have a Kellen Moore offense with those two wide receivers playing a more conservative style, and it may end up not getting them to the Super Bowl, but I think it saved their season this year. I think it saved them from themselves from having that implosion earlier, and that's a consideration of Barkley. He's not going to get the MVP, but his impact on that team is way greater than even the 2,000 yards, I believe. Just philosophically, it takes a player of that caliber to do that. You don't change your offense like that for anybody.
I got to ask you before I let you go, because I agree with everything you said, and all that's just piercing my brain as you're saying that is the scene in Hard Knocks off season with Mara going into Joe Shane's office and being like, just don't let him, he better not go to Philadelphia.
I'll be losing sleep if he goes to the Eagles. Yeah.
Does Joe Shane keep his job?
Well, we've heard no rumblings out of there, and so the thing that I've wondered, take this into account. This is sort of insidery stuff that people in the league think of. It's a lot easier to replace a coach for an owner than a GM. Mm-hmm. When you replace the GM, you've got a whole bunch of work to do.
Yeah, you got to.
The owner has to be involved, and now we're bringing the Tisch family in, and we've got family members who maybe last time didn't want to hire Joe Shane, and now it's going to be their turn or whatever. You don't know anything of that type of stuff could be going on behind the scenes. So it's way easier if you like Joe Shane, and you feel like he's, even if they've had some ups and downs, you feel like he's pretty good at what he does. Let's say internally, you could think that. It's a lot easier for the owner to just kind of stay the course.
If Malik Neighbors hadn't hit, probably it's a different conversation.
Yeah. So, and think of these places too. Think of Chicago's like the Giants too, with the Maras, the McCaskies. These are not hard-charging Silicon Valley guys who are on the edge and trying to get 1% better every day in everything they do, right? They're not like trying a new mindfulness regimen on top of
Yeah.
their workout, and they're not eating except for 8 hours of the day, and they're only drinking coffee in the morning, and they're doing all this stuff. That's not the Maras and the McCaskies. They're driving the Titanic. It doesn't turn around fast. They're on a life cruise, right? These guys are not pushing, in my opinion, the same way that even a Jeffrey Lurie is. It's in his DNA. It's in his nature. He was a draftnik when he bought the team, right? He's totally into all of it. And like, how do we get 1% better today? And you know what? We may fire the coach with a winning record. Nick Sirianni's won 70% of his games, and people are like, hey, if they lose in the playoffs, he could be out, right? That's a different culture. So think of that when you're thinking of these places and whether they turn or not. Sometimes they just don't want to. It's a pain.
Yeah, I'll give you one last thing that you can toss aside, but as a possible pick six topic, if you look at the coaching, the teams that have really part of the story this season, it has been these dual coaching teams where you've got Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo has been the story for a while. You've got Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell. You've got Vic Fangio and Nick Sirianni. You kind of got Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. Like these teams that have
the double barrel. Yeah.
Double barrel is a good way to think about it. And I think that's going to be the question for Mike McDonald. They've got maybe single barrel, and does he need to go out and get a double barrel? That to me has been another storyline. There's basically two head coach quality people on the staff.
That's really good. Yeah, that's good. That'd be a fun thing to even look at historically.
It feels more prevalent this year than I've felt it in previous years.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I think the Quinn and Kingsbury is a good one too. Where you get somebody who's basically de facto head coach of the other side of the ball.
Exactly.
Dan Campbell, you would say Glenn and Aaron Johnson.
That's a triple. That's
Ben
a triple
Johnson.
barrel, you could say.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, Lions are triple because they get. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I will look at that. That's a good.
I'll read what you write regardless. I always do.
I'll take full credit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fine. He is Mike Sando of The Athletic. Mike, thank you so much. Have a happy new year, and appreciate you coming on every week.
You too. Enjoyed it as always. Thanks.
All right. That was Mike Sando of The Athletic. Make sure you check him out at Sando NFL on Twitter and all the places. Fun time chatting with Mike as usual, and I'll go back through and add chapters to this show because people are always like, "Wait a second, when are you going to talk about the thing?" But good stuff as always. Appreciate all of you. If you have not already given the show a like and click subscribe, why not? Come on, appreciate it if you would do that. Also, head on over to jkboots.com. Use code HawkBlogger, get you 10% off. We've had people buying a pair of boots pretty much every day this week, which is amazing for them. They also get a chance still to be the person that walks away with these Seahawks themed boots that I will be choosing who gets to have them made just for your feet from like handmade. 6 to 8 weeks they will take to craft those just for your feet, just like they do with all of their boots. Also, we've given away 3 pairs of boots to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation, helping keep Northwest Forest safe and beautiful. And so this is great. Go use code HawkBlogger, get your 10% off. You will not regret it. All right, folks, I'll be back with you tomorrow. I think if Jeff Simmons is available, depending on the status of his lovely wife and their impending new child, Jeff and I will probably go deep on draft. Just telling you, we won't be able to hold ourselves back. It's time to talk draft. So we will start doing that tomorrow. Even if Jeff is not available, I will probably end up going and spending time on draft tomorrow. And then Sunday, I'm kind of debating whether we'll do a watch party Sunday. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Generally want to reserve that to subscribers. So if you are a member of the channel, would appreciate you letting me know, and we'll go from there. But have a great rest of your Friday. We will find out later today who's going to be available. I'm a little concerned Byron Murphy, who's missed time with a back issue yesterday, may not play, which would be a real shame. I would have really liked to see him play. Hopefully, maybe things turn around, but would have liked to see him maybe have a bigger share of snaps in this final game and maybe get some big statistical moments to kind of send him off in the offseason feeling good. But we will see soon enough. All right, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Until then, I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been episode 285 of Hawk Blogger Mornings.